Story 1. Haunted Spirit Halloween Encounter. I've always loved Halloween. Something about the way the air changes, the streets fill with kids in costumes, and the smell of pumpkin spice in the cold October wind. It's thrilling, but nothing in my 27 years prepared me for what happened last Halloween. I can't say this story with a smile, because even thinking about it now makes my skin crawl. It started with the store itself, the chain Spirit Halloween. Every year, it pops up in the weirdest places: empty shops, closed supermarkets, even old gas stations. This one had taken over an abandoned hardware store on the edge of town, right near a highway most people avoid after dark. My friend Matt had texted me a photo of it the night before with the caption, "Dude, you have to check this place out. It's massive." I laughed, of course. Spirit Halloween stores are always fun, but there was something off about this one, even from the outside. I noticed the way the lights flickered unevenly, casting long, jagged shadows across the cracked pavement. I told Matt I'd meet him there around 7 p.m., figuring we'd just browse some costumes, laugh, maybe grab some overpriced candy. The moment I stepped inside, I felt it. I can't describe it fully. It wasn't like the usual store energy of cheap animatronics and blaring music. There was weight in the air, like someone unseen was watching me from the shadows between the shelves. I shook it off, blaming the darkness and my own overactive imagination. Matt was already there, holding a Jason Voorhees mask upside down like it was a trophy. He grinned when he saw me. "Dude, check this out," he said. "These props are insane this year. Look at this clown." I followed him down the aisle lined with creepy dolls, life-sized skeletons, and motion-activated monsters that screamed every time someone walked past. And then I saw it. A corner of the store that was unusually dim. The mannequins there, they weren't like the others. They weren't just dressed in costumes. They looked too real. Pale skin, glassy eyes, perfect hair. They didn't move, but I swore they were watching me. I laughed nervously. "Matt, check this out. These mannequins are weird." He followed my gaze, but his grin never faltered. "Relax, man. It's just some new hyper-realistic models, spirits stepping up their game." We wandered further, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the mannequins were moving slightly when I wasn't looking. Just a tilt of the head, a blink of an eye. I know it sounds ridiculous. Maybe it was my imagination. But then Matt left me for a second to check out some masks, and I noticed something chilling. One of the mannequins, the one dressed in a black hooded costume, wasn't where it was before. I froze. The aisle was long, and I was sure I hadn't seen it move. I took a careful step forward, and it seemed to turn its head slowly, following me. I told myself it was a trick of the light, but the fear crawling up my spine wasn't normal. I turned to leave, but the aisle felt longer than it had before. Every shelf, every skeleton, every doll seemed to press closer, like the store itself was alive, pushing me toward that corner. When Matt returned, I tried to laugh it off. "Man, this place is trippy," he shrugged. "Spooky Halloween vibes, right? Come on, let's grab some candy." We walked to the checkout, and that's when I saw it again. Through the reflection in the glass candy counter, I saw the hooded mannequin standing behind me, except Matt was right there, and no one else was in the store. I spun around. Empty aisle. Just the mannequins, staring. I tried to joke. "Okay, that's weird." Matt didn't notice anything. I paid quickly, grabbed my bag, and left. I thought that would be the end. But it wasn't. When I got home, I set my bag down on the kitchen counter. Candy, masks. A small animatronic cat that hissed when it moved. I laughed nervously, relieved to be back in my apartment. And then I saw it. The hooded mannequin mask from the store. My bag hadn't contained it. It was propped up in my living room, perfectly upright, staring at me. I froze. My apartment door was locked. I hadn't taken it out. I ran to the bag. Nothing. Just candy wrappers, the animatronic cat, and a note taped to the mask. "Thank you for letting me follow you home." I never returned to a Spirit Halloween store again. And I never forgot the way that Mask's eyes seemed to track me around my apartment that night. Even now, I leave lights on every night in October because I'm never sure if it's really gone. Story 2. The costume that chose me. I've always thought of myself as a practical guy. I'm not superstitious. I don't believe in ghosts, and I've never been the type to scare easily. But that all changed last year during the week of Halloween. I learned the hard way that sometimes the things you wear don't just fit your body, they can take over your life. It all started when I was looking for a costume. My town is small, so our options are usually limited to whatever Spirit Halloween store or small pop-up shops are around. But I stumbled across a little thrift shop I'd never noticed before, wedged between a laundromat and an old diner. Its sign was simple: Fright Finds Halloween and Oddities. The windows were foggy, and the inside smelled of old fabric and something metallic like rust and dust. I went inside, curious. The bell above the door jingled, and an old woman appeared from the back. She looked like she'd stepped out of another era, thin, with sharp eyes that seemed to see straight through me. "Looking for something special?" she asked. I shrugged. "Just a costume. Nothing crazy." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, I have something just for you." She reached under the counter and pulled out a full-body clown costume. The fabric was old but pristine, red and black with jagged stripes. And the mask, I don't even know how to describe it. It was like it had a grin that could follow you with your own reflection. "Oh, it looks, intense," I said, hesitating. "It chooses its wearer," she said quietly. "Try it on and see if it fits." I laughed nervously, but for some reason I felt compelled. Something in her gaze made me nod. I went to the tiny changing area and slipped into the costume. The moment it zipped up, I felt different. Not just wearing it, but like it was hugging me, melding with me. My reflection in the mirror didn't look like me. It looked sharper, crueler, more alive than I'd ever been. My smile, my actual mouth, felt wrong. I shook it off. Just a costume, I told myself. I bought it, even though it had cost far more than I expected. The old woman didn't say goodbye. She just watched me leave, her grin wider than before. The first night was fine. I went out trick-or-treating with some friends, the costume drawing attention. Kids screamed, adults laughed. But when I returned home, things started weird. At first, small things. The mirror in my bathroom reflected the mask's grin when I wasn't wearing it. My friends who came over said they felt like someone was in the room with them, even when I was alone. I laughed it off, attributing it to the Halloween hype. Then more serious things happened. Objects in my apartment moved on their own. My laptop was opened to images of me in the costume. Even though no one had taken any photos, my phone would ring at night with static. And sometimes I could swear I heard laughter in my apartment, low and guttural. I tried to get rid of the costume. I put it in a bag. I threw it in the dumpster. It always came back, folded neatly on my bed, the mask facing me, smiling. One night, I woke up to the sound of whispering. My bedroom was dark, except for the moonlight spilling through the blinds, and there it was, the costume, standing upright in the corner, even though I had folded it on the chair. The mask seemed alive. I froze. My own voice came out, trembling. Go away. The mask tilted its head slowly, and I could swear it whispered back in a voice not my own. You chose me. I ran out of my apartment and never slept there that night. I called my friends, but they only laughed, saying I was letting my imagination get the best of me. But I knew better. Days passed, and I realized the costume was changing me. I started dreaming of things I would never do, dark things, violent things. Waking up, I felt different. People on the street would look at me strangely, almost afraid. I could feel their fear, and it made something inside me hunger. Finally, desperate, I returned to the thrift shop. I wanted to confront the old woman, demand answers, and rid myself of this nightmare. The shop was gone, completely gone, just an empty lot where the building used to be. No sign it had ever existed. Weeks later, I decided to burn the costume in the woods. I piled it high, drenched it in lighter fluid, and lit it. The flames roared, and I thought it was over. Then I heard laughter. Not from me, not from anyone. Deep, dark, alive. I turned, and there it was, standing in the shadows. Not the costume, but something that wore it perfectly, and it smiled at me with my own face. I ran, never looking back. But every night, in my dreams, it's still there, waiting, watching, smiling. And I know one day it will come for me completely. The first night I spent alone with the costume after bringing it home was uncomfortable. At first, nothing happened. I unpacked the candy I'd bought from Spirit Halloween, put the mask on the dresser, and went about my normal routine. But as the night wore on, I started noticing things. costume, neatly folded, began to look less like fabric and more like something alive. I know it sounds insane, but the red and black stripes seemed to shift slightly in the shadows, almost writhing as if breathing. I kept telling myself I was imagining it, an overactive mind spurred by Halloween hype. I turned on the TV to distract myself. The volume was low. A documentary about haunted houses played, but then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw the mask's grin flash at me. I spun around nothing. I laughed nervously and shook my head. Get a grip, I muttered to myself. That's when the whispering started. At first, it was faint, like wind rustling through leaves. Then it grew louder, forming words I could almost understand. You can't leave me. You chose me. I froze. The voice wasn't inside my head. It came from the room. I dared not turn toward the dresser. Hours passed in silence. Every creak, every shadow, every flicker of moonlight made my heart pound like a drum. I tried to sleep, but I felt eyes on me the entire night. The next day, I called my friends to hang out, trying to act normal. But during the drive, I realized something had changed in me. My hands twitched involuntarily, almost as if the costume still clung to my skin. Matt, my best friend, noticed first. Dude, you're different, he said, frowning. You're smiling weird. Like, I don't know, not you. I laughed it off. It's just the Halloween stuff. Too much candy, probably. But later that night, at a small Halloween party, it got worse. I had worn a generic costume, not the cursed clown. But even then, people kept giving me weird looks. A couple of kids screamed when they saw me, and one adult actually crossed the street to avoid me. That's when I knew something wasn't right. It wasn't just the costume anymore. It was me. Over the next few days, the costume began to appear in places it shouldn't. I'd leave it in my closet, and the next morning, it would be on my bed, facing me. I tried bagging it, throwing it in the dumpster, even locking it in the basement. Nothing worked. Sleep became impossible. Every night, I dreamed of the costume. In my dreams, I was wearing it, but not in a fun way. I was doing things I didn't want to do, things I couldn't explain. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my hands shaking, and my apartment subtly rearranged. Once, I woke to find the mask hovering inches from my face, its grin impossibly wide. I screamed, grabbed a chair, and threw it across the room. It hit the wall and fell, and for a second, I thought I had defeated it. But when I looked back, the mask had moved. It was standing upright again, facing me. The whisper came again. You chose me. Desperate, I tried to find the thrift store. Maybe the woman who sold it could help me. I went to the street where it had been, but it was gone. Completely. Just an empty lot. No sign of it ever existing. I asked neighbors, people at nearby shops. No one remembered a store called Fright Finds. It was as if it had never been there. I started researching the costume itself, searching online for similar clown suits, and stumbled across an old forum. One user had posted about a clown costume that supposedly chose its wearer, binding itself to them. Stories ranged from people going insane to disappearing entirely. My blood ran cold. I realized I was not alone, but that didn't make me feel better. By the next week, I could feel the costume inside me, even when I wasn't wearing it. My dreams became darker, violent. I started to speak in ways I didn't recognize, laughing at things I shouldn't. Friends and family began to notice. My mother called me one night. "Are you okay? You sound strange." "I'm worried about you." I forced a laugh. "I'm fine. Just Halloween, you know." But it wasn't Halloween. Not really. It was the costume, and it was taking over me. I knew I had to get rid of it. I drove to the woods outside town, planning to burn it. I piled it high, soaked it in lighter fluid, and lit the match. Flames roared, and I thought I was free. But then I heard it. Laughter. Deep, human, yet not human. I spun around, heart racing. Shadows danced between the trees, and there it was, the costume, perfectly upright, smiling at me. Not fabric this time. Something alive. I ran. I didn't stop until I was back in my apartment, locked inside, gasping. But every night, the laughter returns. I wake to find small things moved. The mask, or something in it, watches me. Weeks later, I was alone in my apartment, trying to work on my laptop. I glanced at the corner where I'd stored the costume. Empty. Relief. And then I noticed something on my reflection in the screen. A grin that wasn't mine. My lips hadn't moved, but my reflection smiled. Slowly. Perfectly. And in the darkness behind me, I saw the hooded eyes, the red and black stripes. I wasn't wearing the costume. I wasn't looking at it, but it had merged with me. I screamed, but no sound came. The grin in the mirror was my own now. And that's when I realized it didn't want the costume anymore. It wanted me, completely. Even now, I write this, hoping someone will read it and understand. The thing that chose me is still inside me, watching, smiling, waiting, and it will never leave. Story 3. The decorations that watched. I've lived in my town my whole life, a quiet place in the Midwest, the kind of town where everyone knows everyone, and Halloween is the biggest event of the year. Houses are decked out in fake cobwebs, pumpkins, skeletons, and inflatable ghosts. It's all fun and games, or so I thought. Last Halloween, something happened that I still can't explain. It started with my neighbor, Mr. Halloway. He was an old man with a twisted sense of humor, always decorating his house more elaborately than anyone else. This year, he went even further. Giant animatronic monsters, hundreds of flickering lights, life-sized scarecrows. But there was one decoration that caught my eye. A row of small, human-like figurines standing along the edge of his yard. Pale, featureless faces, dressed in ragged clothes. They didn't move, or at least, they didn't at first. On Halloween night, I went out with my friends to see the town. People were laughing. Kids ran from house to house, candy in hand. But every time we walked past Mr. Holloway's yard, I felt eyes on us. It wasn't normal. I could feel it in my chest, a tightness, a sense that the figurines were watching every step. I tried to laugh it off, joking with my friends. "Creepy, right?" I said, nudging one of the figurines. But it moved, just a little, head tilted like it was observing. I froze. My friends didn't notice. I swear it was alive. Later that night, I was walking home alone. My friends had gone ahead. The streets were quiet, lit by the flickering orange of jack-o'-lanterns. As I passed Mr. Holloway's house again, the figurines were closer to the sidewalk than they had been before. My stomach dropped. I took a step back. One of them tilted its head, perfectly aligned with mine, and I felt an icy chill run down my spine. I ran the rest of the way home, locked the door, and tried to convince myself I was overreacting. But then, through the window, I saw them. Dozens of tiny shadows in my yard, not figurines. Shadows that moved like people watching me. That night, strange things began happening inside my house. Objects shifted on shelves. My TV turned on by itself, static filling the room. Footsteps echoed in the hall, soft, deliberate. By the next day, I noticed marks on my walls. Small handprints, smeared as if someone or something had tried to enter. I tried to warn my parents, my friends. They laughed. "It's Halloween, calm down," they said. But I could feel it. We were being watched. I stayed up the next night, determined to see what it was. Around midnight, the lights in the neighborhood flickered. I stepped outside. The figurines, they were gone from Mr. Holloway's yard. They were lining the street, perfectly spaced, each one facing my house. And as I watched, they began to move toward me, not walking, but gliding across the grass, their blank faces staring straight into my soul. I grabbed a flashlight, trying to scare them away. Nothing. My heart pounded. The air grew cold. A whispering started, a chorus of soft, unintelligible voices rising from the street. I ran back inside, slammed the door, and barricaded it. My parents were asleep. My phone had no signal. I was alone. Through the window, I watched the shadows approach my house. They didn't knock. They didn't speak. They just watched. Hours passed. Morning finally came. Sunlight spilled across the yard, and the shadows were gone. Relief washed over me. Maybe it had been a dream, a hallucination, paranoia fueled by Halloween decorations. I was wrong. The next night, I walked past Mr. Holloway's house again. The yard was empty, like normal. No figurines, no monsters, nothing. I laughed nervously, relieved. But as I passed the street corner, I saw something that froze my blood. My own reflection in a neighbor's window stood on the sidewalk across from me. My face, pale and blank, staring back, and then I realized it wasn't a reflection. It moved independently, mimicked me perfectly. I ran home, locked the doors, and peered through the blinds. Across the street, every yard was filled with small, pale figures, hundreds of them, all wearing faces like mine, all staring, all waiting. That was when I understood Mr. Halloway hadn't decorated his yard. He had summoned something, and it had claimed me as one of its own. I never went outside after dark that Halloween. And even now, I leave my lights on because I know they are still out there, watching, learning, and waiting for the night I forget to lock my door. After that first night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those small, faceless figures marching toward my house. Even in the daylight, I could feel them in my peripheral vision, always just outside my direct line of sight. I tried to tell myself it was stress, Halloween hype, maybe even too much sugar. But rational explanations couldn't account for the things I began noticing around town. Small children would stop and stare at me in silence, their eyes wide, unnaturally still. Pets in the neighborhood refused to come near me, growling at nothing. Shadows seemed to cling to me, stretching long and thin as if they were alive. I began documenting everything. Notes, photos, voice recordings. But every time I reviewed them, I noticed something disturbing. In the recordings, shadows in my living room appeared slightly different than I remembered. Sometimes, faces that hadn't been there in real life appeared. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting. I wasn't. One night, I ventured out, trying to confront the situation. I walked down my street, flashlight in hand, my heart pounding with each step. The autumn wind carried the faint rustle of dry leaves, but beneath it, I could hear whispers. Low, unintelligible, coming from the shadows along the sidewalk. As I passed Mr. Halloway's old lot, I noticed the figurines were back, but more than ever. Hundreds of them, stretching down the street in perfect alignment, mirroring every movement I made. I froze. When I took a step forward, they stepped forward. When I turned, they turned. I realized the horrifying truth. They weren't just watching me, they were learning me. I ran home, slamming the door behind me. Every lock, every bolt, every piece of furniture was a fragile barrier against the encroaching dread. I felt watched, even inside my own walls. The shadows moved freely through the corners of my apartment, always just out of reach, always waiting. By the third night, things were escalating beyond me. Neighbors reported strange occurrences, missing children's toys, fleeting glimpses of pale figures standing in their yards, and a low, echoing laughter that seemed to roll through the streets. People whispered about Mr. Halloway, though he had died years ago. Rumors spread of dark rituals, old family curses, and Halloween night deals that no one fully understood. I realized I wasn't the only one affected, but it didn't comfort me. If the figures were spreading, I might be only the beginning. On the fourth night, I decided to observe the phenomenon. I peered through my blinds as midnight approached. One of the figurines, bigger than the others, stepped forward. Its faceless head tilted toward me. I could feel its gaze directly on me, though there were no eyes. The air turned turned icy, and the shadows in my apartment grew long and stretched across the walls. Then it happened. The figure mimicked my movements perfectly, down to the twitch of my fingers. I took a step back. It did the same. I raised my hand. It mirrored me. I stumbled backward and fell, heart racing. I screamed. No one heard me. The whispers turned into a low chant, indecipherable, but filled with a strange authority. Something inside me shifted. I felt a pull, as if my very essence was being copied, absorbed, rewritten. For the next 2 nights, I stayed barricaded inside, trying not to look at anything outside. But every reflection, every window, every screen showed the figures closer than they should have been. I began hearing voices in my apartment, whispering my name. I would turn, and there would be nothing, only fleeting shadows dancing in the corner of my vision. My hands shook constantly, my mind fracturing under the weight of the unseen. I started noticing small changes in myself. My reflection sometimes didn't match my movements exactly. My shadow on the wall twisted unnaturally, reaching further than it should. And then I realized I was becoming one of them, slowly, inevitably. Halloween night arrived. I couldn't leave my apartment. I sat in the darkness, flashlight dead, waiting for what? I didn't know. At midnight, a knock came at my door. Slow, measured. I didn't move. The knocking stopped, replaced by a soft scraping along the floor. I dared to peek through the peephole. My own face stared back at me, but not me. Perfectly pale, blank, expressionless. Behind it, the hundreds of figurines crowded the street. I knew then that the town had been cursed for decades, and that Mr. Halloway's decorations were never decorations. They were vessels, watchers, and collectors, waiting to harvest the essence of anyone who dared observe them. I screamed. The door slowly creaked open, but no one entered. Instead, I felt the shadows pour into me. My mind fractured, my body stiffened. My reflection smiled without my consent. I knew, in that instant, I had become part of the collection. And as I write this, my hands trembling, I realize it's too late for me. The figures are out there. They watch, they wait, and now I watch too. Halloween will come again, and I'll be waiting with them.